Hello, this is Sarah Tuberty, your host from Disarming Disability. Enjoy the following program on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
The Houston Astros, the defending World Series champions, got better adding Garrett Cole.
The insightful interviews.
Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible. With how much emphasis is put on the position, yet how many over the last couple of years we've had questions. Why do we put such an emphasis on drafting a quarterback number one overall?
The bottom line is there's not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And I think with the new CBA, it's really a low-risk gamble now. If you look at the playoff teams, the common denominator, good quarterback play.
The hottest takes.
I think the guy to blame is the one guy who hasn't left yet. I think Russell Westbrook is one of the bigger problems in Oklahoma City.
Can all be found on Press Row. Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network. Here's your host.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Christian Heimall.
Welcome back on Press Row, everybody, here on this Thursday, November 21st, the week before Thanksgiving. Christian Heimall here with you, broadcasting, as always, part of the Public House Media Network. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends and family on Apple and Google Play. You can find us on iHeartRadio as well as Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, and, of course, PublicHouseMedia.org. Get yourself some awesome show gear as well while you're there. It's an interesting day today and an interesting story this week. Again, we talk baseball a lot, and we're going to talk baseball even more today. Dan Barry, the New York Times, and the author of the book Bottom of the 33rd, Hope, Redemption, and Baseball's Longest Game, is going to join us. And he's going to join us because those of you, if you've been paying attention, have known that for a while now, Major League Baseball, it's been almost a month now, Major League Baseball has had this idea of contracting its minor league system and potentially getting rid of a large number of minor league teams. It was a story that was first reported in Baseball America sometime towards the end of October, mid-October. There was even an article in the Sports Business Journal for the week of October 28th in which it was discussed, largely in part because of some of the conditions of some of these stadiums and the fact of how old they are and the fact of the matter of them not being up to standards of major league facilities. But Dan and his team in the New York Times, they actually were able to uncover a new proposal, and again, just very early on in the stages of this negotiations with minor league baseball, potentially 42 minor league teams that would have their affiliations removed and basically become, for lack of a better term, independent. Some of these teams have been around for years, basically almost the entire Midwest League, which features teams like Burlington, Iowa, Clinton, Iowa, the Quad Cities River Bandits, who play in a stadium that has been around for over 90 years, the Hagerstown Suns in Maryland, the Jackson, Tennessee Generals, the Frederick Keys in Maryland of the Carolina League, the Erie Seawolves of a double-A team potentially losing out on their affiliation, all the way out to Rocky Mountain, Salem Kaiser in Oregon, Princeton, West Virginia, Orem, Utah, the Lowell Spinners who've been around for decades, the Lexington Legends. There's so many of these teams. The Vermont Lake Monsters in Burlington, Vermont potentially could lose their affiliation under this new proposal, and part of the guidelines, and you can go and read this in the New York Times, the headline on it is "Across the Country, Minor League Towns Face Major League Threat." Dan Barry and the New York Times do a great job of uncovering it, but this is something that could potentially happen in 2020, following the 2020 season, after the Professional Baseball Association's current arrangement with minor league baseball and Major League Baseball comes to a close. And it's interesting to read some of these stories. And for those of you who may not have had a chance to read the Sports Business Journal, I just want to take a couple of quotes here. Pat O'Connor, president and CEO of Minor League Baseball. This is from the Sports Business Journal article written by Eric Prisbell. Pat O'Connor, the president and CEO of Minor League Baseball, believes MLB is treating MILB like a vendor and, quote, doesn't respect what we stand for. The relationship has changed drastically under this current administration, O'Connor said. It's decidedly more handled like a labor negotiation. It's decidedly more just about business. I find it very difficult to believe there is a genuine interest in growing the game and then cutting 40 teams out of grassroots America baseball. Now, Rob Manfred, when asked about this during the World Series, commissioner for Major League Baseball, he said, quote, "There is an economic system in minor league baseball where we heavily subsidize what goes on in minor league baseball. We are more than prepared to continue to do that. Against that backdrop, I don't think it's unreasonable for us to expect that we have facilities that are first class for some of the greatest athletes in the world, that we have league alignments that are reasonable and not onerous for those same athletes." What this means to me is twofold. Number one, some of these facilities are not up to the standards of Major League Baseball. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Having been in a number of these stadiums across baseball, across the country, there are a lot that are atrociously built and seriously need renovations, if not complete teardowns and rebuilds. What this also says to me is that Major League Baseball wants to maybe streamline its minor league system where those minor league affiliates are closer to their parent organization. For example, the New York Mets, for the longest time, their AAA organization was in Las Vegas. So if you had to get a AAA guy up and into Citi Field, you had to fly him from Vegas to New York. The Los Angeles Dodgers, their AAA affiliate is in Oklahoma City. The New Orleans Baby Cakes, I believe, are the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins. That's not as far, but still, that is a long way to go. The Charlotte Knights are a AAA affiliate of the Chicago White Sox in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Durham Bulls, a AAA affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays in North Carolina. Again, it's not a terribly long trip, but for some of these teams, it can be a very long struggle to get these players, and not very cost-effective either, to get these players up the ranks into the major leagues. Another side of it, when you really think about it, how many major leaguers actually make it from the minor league system? How many minor leaguers are there? When you talk about 5 or 6, sometimes even 7 levels of minor league baseball, 25-man rosters on all of those, that right there is over 150 players that are in the minor league system alone, all competing for 25 spots on a major league roster. It's a very small percentage of guys that actually make it up to the majors, so maybe there's not much of a return on investment either. That being said, I don't know if this is a great thing for baseball. This is a very scary thing because having been to a lot of these, I used to go to Vermont Lake Monsters games a lot. That stadium is not the nicest stadium at all. It's a very run-down stadium. The outfield wall is like a bridge to a train track that should have been leveled decades ago. It's not the sexiest stadium in the world. Same thing goes for places like Williamsport Crosscutters. The Staten Island Yankees have a very nice stadium, but it's in the middle of Staten Island, and very difficult for people to get to. The Quad Cities Stadium, Modern Woodman Park, is a great location right on the Mississippi River, but it is an older stadium, and it is very much shows its age. So I totally get it. Not to mention the fact that they're an affiliate of the Houston Astros and have to go a full 17 hours or 12 hours, whatever it is, from Iowa down to Houston if someone were to get called up. So I don't think this is a good thing for baseball. I think it can be, from a monetary standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, but who knows? And then not only that, but you look at the potential legal ramifications of all of this, and we're going to touch on this a lot more as we get a little bit closer because it is really interesting to see. But the antitrust lawsuits that could come out of this for minor league baseball is incredible. If you go onto SI.com, Sports Illustrated, and read this article from Michael McCann, which is really, really impressive. Headline is MLB faces tough legal road to restructure minor league baseball. A lot of it is because the fact that Congress has essentially turned a blind eye to antitrust laws that benefit Major League Baseball and minor league baseball. And it would be a very, very busy and difficult road to hoe for Major League Baseball if it was going to seriously do this. And when you have senators like Bernie Sanders, who obviously deal with the Lake Monsters in Burlington and what they mean from an economic standpoint to those small municipalities, it's going to be a very long, drawn-out fight. I don't think this is going to be something that Major League Baseball is able to really implement and get together right away. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be interesting to see how it all comes together. But this could be scary. This could be very, very bad for the game of baseball and someone who loves it. I don't know if this is something that is a good move by Major League Baseball. Granted, who knows how many of these teams actually end up, getting removed or whatever it is. And there are options. There's this thing called the Dream League that they're talking about where these 42 teams would go and become, it's basically an independent league. And you guys who listen know this. I work in independent baseball, and I know that side of it very, very well. And I think it could be great for independent baseball. But there are bigger struggles with that because your operating costs go up a ton because you have to pay player salaries and pay support staff and pay for more travel and pay for workman's comp. There's so much that goes into it that it could be very damaging to the game of baseball, especially in small towns that don't have major league affiliates. But we'll talk with Dan Barry of the New York Times and again, author of the book Bottom of the 33rd, Hope, Redemption, and Baseball's Longest Game, coming up right after the break. Your listener questions are coming up as well. Don't forget to find us on social media. Twitter and Instagram is @PressRowPHM. You can email the show, pressrowphm@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Press Row by Public House Media. It's an interesting story we're going to follow for a very, very long time. But when we come back, we'll talk with Dan Barry of the New York Times, who was able to find these 42 teams, what it all means for baseball, and just how likely this thing is really going to become what could be a real threat to America's pastime. We'll touch on that. Dan Barry joins us next. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Peggy Rojas, host of Viviendo una Vida en Balance here at Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you can come back and check my show, Viviendo una Vida en Balance, where we talk about life hacks to live a life in balance. And the show's in Spanish. A new show comes out every Monday, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and share with your friends. Again, thank you for checking out the following broadcast in Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Welcome back on Press Row. Christian Heimall here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. And those of you fans of the show know we talk a lot of baseball and big news despite not being in baseball season over the last couple of weeks. But the reports that have come about over the last couple of weeks regarding potential for minor league teams, a number of them to potentially lose their partnership and their affiliation with a major league organization after the 2020 season. A lot of questions to go about it, a lot of stuff still kind of preliminary discussions and whatnot, but someone who can help us maybe dive a little bit deeper into it, Dan Barry, writer for the New York Times and also the author of the book Bottom of the 33rd, Hope, Redemption, and Baseball's Longest Game, now joins us. Sir, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
And, sir, one of the most recent articles that you had, across the country, minor league towns face major league threat. 42 teams potentially in the minor league system that may lose their ties with a major league affiliate. It's been a conversation that's had over the last couple of months in baseball circles, but if you could kind of give us a little bit of what's come to light as to maybe some of the reasons why these teams may end up losing that affiliation.
I think it comes down to economics, but as you pointed out, it's all kind of being sorted out right now. It is a proposal by Major League Baseball, and so they've presented to the minor league baseball ownership and executive staff a plan, and it's effectively an overhaul of the minor league system as we know it. And it would effectively do away with the lower minor leagues, the rookie league and lower class A leagues. And so what that means is, as you say, there are now 160 minor league teams affiliated with parent clubs across the country, that number would be reduced effectively to 120. 42 teams would lose their affiliation with their parent clubs, and then 2 independent teams would be added to make it up to 120.
And so to make it for that 120 and 42 teams going down, the economics of it, of course, these lower level teams, and this has been a question that a lot of baseball nerds don't understand, is the need for a rookie ball, a short season, a high season, all of that, especially when you look at some of the venues, like, for instance, a Burlington Royals or a Quad Cities River Bandits, where maybe they aren't the state-of-the-art stadiums that we're seeing built at the double and triple A levels now. How much of it is the venue? How much of it is the distance from that parent organization? And how much of it is just simply the fact that, such a small percentage of those minor leaguers make the majors that maybe these parent clubs are seeing a very minimal return on investment, so they don't see a reason to keep those around?
Well, I think all of what you said may be at play. I would note that Major League Baseball made a ton of money last year. So it's not as though Major League Baseball is hurting for money, okay? And some of the reasons that they give for this transformation, this proposed transformation, include the quality of some of the ballparks. They're concerned that the ballparks are not up to standards, up to Major League standards, A, and B, that they don't have the facilities to help in the proper coordination of some of their hotter prospects. So that's one reason that is floated out there. In fact, I talked to a Major League executive, and he said in some of these ballparks, we're even concerned about the players' safety, that a player here and there has been accosted, or a player here and there has had his car stolen. So that's what Major League Baseball is proposing as being in the mix. The truth is, as well, that this comes down to money. They could save something like $100 million over 5 years by shrinking the minor league system. And if you have prospects, they would spend, rather than playing in a rookie league, they would spend their time, say, down at a facility down in Florida, where all sorts of analysts would be able to refine their curveball or shorten their stance, or whatever the heck it is that their analytics are telling them would help that player. The downside of this, there are many downsides to this, and among them is that you reduce the fan interest, or you risk losing the fan interest, because people go to these small ballparks, and whether it's Burlington or Lexington, Kentucky, or Erie, Pennsylvania, because they know that they might see the future Jose Altuve, or they might see the future Justin Verlander, whoever it may be. That is an absolute charm and a draw for these minor league clubs that are affiliated at the moment. So minor league executives say that the damage to the value, to the market value of their club would drop by about 80%. So if a team is affiliated, say, with the Minnesota Twins in 2020, and then in 2021 they're now not affiliated with the Minnesota Twins, minor league executives say they lose, 80% of that valuation, and it's hard to justify that to, say, the community or to the fans.
You bring up an interesting point there, and we're speaking with Dan Barry, New York Times. It's the fact that these minor league clubs, even though they may not be right next door to that major league city, still can have an impact on the fan base of that team. The Cedar Rapids Colonels in Iowa, they're a little bit closer to the Minnesota Twins than maybe, let's say, a Burlington Royals or a Vermont Lake Monsters, for example, and how they impact the fan base of that organization. But it's also kind of intriguing to see, and even, Senator Bernie Sanders chimed in about this on Twitter, and you had retweeted it on your account, the fact that the economic impact it can have on these smaller markets and what it might mean. Having been to many Lake Monsters games in my past, it's not a tremendously beautiful ballpark, but it still is central to what Burlington, Vermont really can offer.
I agree with that. There are a lot of things going on here. First, in many of these minor league towns and small cities, it's a public-private partnership wherein oftentimes the local community or the local municipality owns the ballpark, okay? And in years past, say, for example, in Erie, Pennsylvania, the city of Erie has sunk money into that ballpark to appease the major league executives about the quality of that ballpark. And so they just sunk a ton of money in there. In Billings, Montana, that ballpark is only 10 or 11 years old. And so now Major League Baseball, they feel, is pulling the rug out from beneath them. Mm-hmm. Secondly, these teams, in many, many ways, are something for the local community to be proud of, right. Okay? And it's part of their identification. So if you look at the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, you and I may laugh about that, but the reason that they're called the Rumble Ponies is because Binghamton happens to be the carousel capital of the world. The city has 5 carousels. No other city in the world has 5 carousels. Binghamton does for reasons not worth going into. Or the Lowell Spinners. Why are they called the Spinners? Because Lowell was a huge mill town. Mm-hmm. And so it's a way. It's a channeling of community pride, and the draw is that they may see a future major leaguer, not only a future major leaguer, a future all-star or a future Hall of Famer. And when you're in some of these ballparks, and I've been in quite a few of them, there'll oftentimes be murals on the inside walls of guys who have made it. And so I was at the Lexington Legends ballpark last week, and they have these murals of Jose Altuve and Ben Zobrist, and they're quite proud of that. And I think Major League Baseball is being disingenuous if they're suggesting that it doesn't really matter. It very much does matter, and we should talk about what the alternative is. So Major League Baseball is not saying we're cutting ties entirely with these organizations. Mm-hmm. If they lose their affiliation with a parent club, they will be invited to join the Dream League, which Major League Baseball would help to set up. Okay, to the minor league executives, that's a sucker's bet. Okay, that's a fake out because Major League Baseball says that it would provide marketing or it would provide baseballs and bats and it would provide umpires. It is not suggesting, as far as I know, paying for the salaries of the ball players and the coaching staff. Okay, nor would they cover the workers' compensation, which can be quite expensive. So if you own a minor league ball team and you're an affiliate of a parent club in 2020, and you're going to try and operate in 2021 as a Dream League team, which is just another name for an independent league team, you don't have that support. Your costs go up astronomically. So it's kind of a fake out.
You're 100% right on that, especially from an independent league. And that was going to be my question was, the potential for some of these teams to go into an independent league like a Frontier American Association or even the Atlantic League, considering where some of these are. But as we're talking about the economics that a major league team may save, those teams, their expenses, I mean, just alone in the Atlantic League, just including baseball salaries, player salaries, workman's comp, you're talking alone right there close to the neighborhood of $500,000 in expenses, not
Absolutely.
even to mention the travel and some of the other stuff that goes with it too. So it seems as though there's a very big double-edged sword here in the fact that, yes, you could save some money, but you're also not only going to maybe disenfranchise some fans, you're going to obviously impact the local town community and some of the things that they have, but then also some of these teams just may cease to exist because that operating cost is so high.
Right. First of all, we should say that if you're playing in the independent leagues, okay, it has to be said that you're a damned good athlete. Mm-hmm. To be able to be paid money to play baseball, you have to be quite good. But it has to be said that oftentimes that quality in those leagues is maybe a notch below. Now there could be people within the independent league system that really do belong in affiliated leagues or even in the major leagues, But by and large, there's a reason why they're playing in the independent leagues. Okay, Major League scouts have said have taken a pass effectively on them. Isn't that fair to say?
Yes, 100%.
Right, and so I've gone to independent league games, and I love it. To me, it's baseball, but I do understand that there's a reduction, in the cachet of it all. I commute into New York City every day when I'm not on the road, and I've done this for 20 years. I saw the Newark Bears Stadium go up.
Yep.
And I just saw it knocked down last month. It's totally leveled. Now, there are various reasons why the Newark Bears wound up not being a successful team that may not apply to the rest of the country, but it was indicative to me that the Newark Bears did not have that stamp of approval from, name it, the New York Yankees or the Minnesota Twins or the Chicago Cubs, and it makes a difference.
A beautiful stadium with a beautiful view of the Manhattan skyline. Bears and Eagles Riverfront Stadium there in Newark. Very, very sad to see that go down, especially considering the history you consider of that organization, all the way back to the Negro Leagues as well. So, Dan, we appreciate your time. I know you're short on time here, but I do want to ask you, should this actually, and this is, again, all proposal, all still to be worked out, but at the earliest it could be that this time next year we're discussing multiple teams, dozens of teams potentially losing their Major League affiliate. Should and if that happen, is this a overall good, bad thing for the game of baseball in general? How does this impact the sport known as America's pastime?
I have to say I fall on the side of it being of it having a negative impact, because there are places around the country where you can't just get into your car and go to Fenway Park, okay? You can't just get into your car and within 2 hours you're at Yankee Stadium. Sometimes Major League Baseball is far, far away, and so this is the highest quality professional baseball you will be able to see. And if that goes away, fan interest declines, okay? So I think in terms of baseball, it's a huge, huge risk to the fan base for Major League Baseball. That's what I think.
He's Dan Barry, writer for the New York Times and author of the book Bottom of the 33rd, Hope, Redemption, and Baseball's Longest Game. Dan, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, take care of yourself. Thank you. All right, that's Dan Barry. Follow him on Twitter at DanBarryNYT. I have to say I agree with him. This it's a sad thing. And again, I'm one of those guys who never really understood and still doesn't understand why we need rookie league and short season A-ball and all these other classifications of it, especially when independent baseball is right there and has the opportunity to succeed. But he's absolutely correct. The Newark Bears are a prime example of the fact of what can happen when a major league team or a minor league team, an independent league team, doesn't have that quote unquote stamp of approval from a major league affiliate, and what it can do to a beautiful, beautiful ballpark in a region that is baseball crazy. Again, you can see the Freedom Tower and see the Statue of Liberty from the press box at Newark's at Bears and Eagles Riverfront Stadium. At least you could before that just got torn down this past month. So potentially could be a very sad day in baseball when that comes. We thank Dan for his time. Again, you can follow him at DanBarryNYT on Twitter. When we come back, your listener questions will wrap up shop. This is Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com.
This is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Confessions of a Military Spouse, where we dig deep and talk about the unspoken hard truths of what it's really like to be a military spouse. A new show comes out bi-weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Confessions of a Military Spouse. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
back on Press Row. Christian Heimall here with you, as we are every Thursday on the Public House Media Network. Big thanks once again to Dan Barry, the New York Times, for joining us. I mentioned it before the break. I agree with him. I mean, it's interesting to hear him say it because, you know, again, I work in independent baseball. I'm very biased on what independent baseball offers from a business standpoint. For, you know, a lot of independent teams are founded in these towns that don't have a minor league affiliate or don't have Major League Baseball but still want professional baseball. But it's interesting to see it because it's one of the things that gets maybe not overlooked but ignored in the independent side of things, is that having that stamp of approval of a Major League affiliate really does impact things. You know, the fact that, you know, again, I used to work for the Quad Cities River Bandits, and the amount of people that got to see Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa and Alex Bregman all come up through that organization was something big for them and something really exciting for them. And for folks, you know, live in North Carolina now with the Greensboro Grasshoppers, where they had, when they were a Miami Marlins affiliate, could see Christian Yelich and Giancarlo Stanton and Jose Fernandez and see them come up. It's a big part of it and a very important piece of growing the game of baseball. So kind of interesting to see and really get that kind of perspective. And we appreciate his time again. Follow him on Twitter at DanBarryNYT. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Facebook at Press Row by Public House Media and submit your listener questions, and we'll get to them right here. First one, Ryan in West Virginia asking, Myles Garrett appealing his suspension, his indefinite suspension for last week's debacle with Mason Rudolph and the Pittsburgh Steelers. How long do you think Garrett should be suspended? Well, first and foremost, he's suspended indefinitely, which including at least this season and the postseason if the Browns were to be able to make it. I think he should honestly be suspended until 2021. I don't think he's completely at fault. Obviously, Mason Rudolph instigated this, trying to rip his helmet off, but Garrett then went and then yanked it off pretty hard. And again, we shouldn't, you know, I'm not trying to victim blame Mason Rudolph here, but if he doesn't go charging after Myles Garrett, he doesn't get a helmet to the head. But anytime you take that and you swing it the way that Myles Garrett did, whether there's intent to harm or not, you cannot do that. And I think he should be suspended at least until the 2021 season. Now, he has appealed based off of a suspension from 2013 when the Houston Texans' Antonio Smith swung his helmet at Richie Incognito in a game. He was suspended for 2 preseason games and 1 regular season game. And basically, Garrett is arguing that that's the premise that's been set by the NFL and saying that the 6 games that he's been suspended currently is excessive based on that precedent, which he's not wrong. However, I think the NFL in the last 6 years has really taken such a hard stance on player safety. They cannot allow this to be something that continues, and they cannot allow this to be something that is not made an example of, I guess, for lack of a better term. All right, this one coming here from Mike. Which comeback win over the weekend was more impressive? Minnesota from 20 down against the Broncos, or Oklahoma from 25 down against the Baylor Bears? Well, Oklahoma by far, to be 100% honest, because the Baylor Bears, I'm not saying they're a better team than the Denver Broncos, but that's a game that is much more must-win for the Oklahoma Sooners than the Vikings were for the Denver Broncos. I mean, the Broncos are a team that was 3-6 going in. Minnesota, yes, they needed to keep pace with the Packers in a very, very impressive NFC North right now. But outside of that, they're not really losing out on a potential playoff spot. They're still a team securely in the playoffs, whether it be the wild card or whether it be winning the NFC North. Oklahoma, on the other hand, they needed that to keep their playoff hopes alive. They needed to do it big time. Not only that, but it was on the road. Minnesota's comeback was at home. And to see what the Sooners did in scoring 24 unanswered points to be able to come back and win that game was very, very impressive, especially doing it without CeeDee Lamb, their best wide receiver. And I think what the Sooners showed is that if they do run the table the rest of the way, if they are able to be unbeaten in the final 3 weeks of the season and go in at 12-1 with victories at Oklahoma State and another win against Baylor in the Big 12 title game, they deserve to be in the college football playoff as possibly that fourth team with potentially an unbeaten Ohio State, an unbeaten Clemson, and an unbeaten LSU. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But definitely the more impressive one was, of course, the Oklahoma Sooners coming back on the road against Baylor. Last one here, Josh asking, you tweeted earlier this week that you don't think any team from the AFC wins the Super Bowl despite the Patriots being arguably the greatest team in the NFL right now. Look, there's nothing wrong with the Patriots or even the Ravens, being considered, as many people see it, the top two teams in the NFL. But to be 100% honest, I saw flaws. I've seen flaws all year in the Patriots. I don't think they have the offense that's necessary. And their defense, when going up against actual talented teams like the Baltimore Ravens, they don't do very well. They're not that impressive. Not to mention the fact that in the NFC, you've got a litany of teams that I think could actually win the Super Bowl. The Seahawks, I will never count out Russell Wilson. I will never count out that defense. The Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers looks amazing all of a sudden. This is really, really, really impressive for this team. Elgton Jenkins, the left guard, has played phenomenal since replacing Lane Taylor. I love the New Orleans Saints. I always will love Drew Brees and will always pick him, do whatever he possibly can to go out there and win a Super Bowl. Not to mention the fact that you look at the Minnesota Vikings. There's questions around the San Francisco 49ers, but there are at least 5 teams in the NFC that I think have a better shot at winning the Super Bowl than either the Patriots or the Ravens. I don't care what the power rankings say. I don't care what anybody else says on that side of things. To me, there's not an AFC team that can stand up with the 5 teams in the NFC right now because they're playing better competition week in and week out. The AFC is a much weaker conference right now. I don't care about the Kansas City Chiefs even at this point because who knows how good they're going to be able to be. And the Chargers and the Steelers and everybody else who's kind of the Browns trying to stay afloat. The Buffalo Bills, they don't scare me. I mean, the Colts, the Texans, none of them really scare me. So we'll see how it all pans out. Big thanks to you guys for listening as always. Don't forget to send us your questions throughout the week. Big thanks to Dan Barry, the New York Times and author of the book Bottom of the 33rd, for joining us and talking Major League Baseball and their proposal to remove minor league teams. We'll see how it all pans out, and we'll certainly be following it. We're off next week for Thanksgiving. Hope you guys all have a great time. Enjoy it. Have some fun with your family. Don't eat too much. Well, maybe do. Who knows? Have a great time, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks right here on Press Row.